this session today is especially aimed at professionals in the types of industries, and I will keep admitting people as they join. It's especially, hi Sue, welcome. We just started, so yeah, you aren't losing anything, and basically we are going to be focusing particularly on best practices that are recommended by Google themselves. So we will be referencing to a document that then I will send you all in the follow-up email. You will get the recording, and there's always, if you have been attending some of these webinars before, there's always a little bit of documentation that you can check on your own. This is from Google directly, and they're their latest, most updated guidelines. And they touch especially on this kind of industries that you will hear me calling your money or your life, which is a sort of particular expression, but it's becoming pretty renowned in the online optimization industry. And it really, really connects with the concept of trust that Google and prospective customers need to establish with your businesses and your online presence. A little bit about me, if we haven't met before, I am the director of a pure play SEO company, which means that we only optimize websites. We don't do anything else. We don't create, design, do any social media, PPC, email marketing. We only look after optimizing websites. I used to say for search engines, and now it's for search engines and AI, because the two things now are completely inextricably connected. So the ways we do and we recommend things to be done, all of the best practices apply equally well to both of the search channels that can be used, that are used by people. Specifically about me, I'm the director of this company. I've been doing this job for quite a long time. This is not fully updated now, it's more, but yeah, I've seen all the evolutions basically in all the ways that this can be done, and it's quite helpful to see how these things are shaping. It's never boring, absolutely. So your money or your life, the way they call it, it sounds like something that comes out of a comic book when there are those bank robberies in case, but it is specifically the way that Google defines all those industries in which the stakes at risk are high, because people might actually be losing on really important things if the information given is wrong, is unreliable, is false, all of those false news, fake news appearing. There are some industries in which Google is particularly attentive, and that's really the topic. We tend to simplify it as talking about medical, legal, and financial, but it's not just that. There's also obviously elements of safety. So when we're talking about public information that needs to go to citizens in a certain way, and obviously everything regards the elections and things that need to be clearly out there in a way that cannot be misunderstood. So these big bucket of macro topics, they fall into this YMYL, your money or your life, mega mix of industries, which means that for these, Google will be stricter. Their expectations on websites, medical, legal, financial, are way higher than what it would be on a B2C e-commerce website, for example. And by the way, if you hear me saying anything that you don't understand, I always try my best to explain things in a very, very simple way. But if there's anything that you don't understand, you can pop a question in the chat. If you're sure that you don't want to forget it. I won't be able to check it now, but at the end, when we have the Q&A, I'll go through everything. And again, as well, you know it, if you're watching it later or re-watching it, you can pop me an email anytime. And, you know, I promise I always reply to every single question that comes. So they have a higher expectation on your website if you fall into this very, very critical segment of niches, which means that they will reward you better. They will rank you better. But they want more from you. They expect more from you. And it's, again, acronyms. SEO there's a lot of acronyms going on. You might have heard the EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness. This is, in a big summary, what they want from you. Expertise that you demonstrate, you need to demonstrate onto your websites, explaining all of your details. For example, we have a real case here. One of our clients, he's in our case studies, is happy to be explained, and we use him as an example in some situations. So medical professional giving lots of medical advice with all of the credentials and information. So you need to explain all of your certifications. And as for the experience, then you need to make it clear to explain all of the years of practice and the various types of accreditations, but also the places where you practice if you're within the medical field. Authority is not something that we can give to ourselves. Usually it's given by somebody else. And in this case, authority is bestowed on you by others online in terms of links. So the backlinks that you might be hearing about, third-party websites pointing to yours, referencing you. So you could have been featured in podcasts, you've published white papers, you've got lots of interviews on some sort of magazines, and the part that Megan was supposed to be doing was around PR. So it was the complementary element of site. All of these elements of PR, so being featured someone else, having this place of thought leadership in the sphere is something that showcase and demonstrate authority in the way that others see you. At the same time, one thing that you have control of, putting yourself out there, so trying to step up and offer yourself for being featured, giving advice, publications that you see that you could contribute to. So being proactive, reaching out and saying, I'm glad to be used as a source of information. And there's plenty of journalists that often need some sort of reference point on many issues that sometimes are particularly critical in the public attention. But at the same time, another thing that you have control of and bestows a lot of authority and trust upon you is reviews. So you are the one that you cannot definitely force. They say you can bring somebody to the well, you can make them drink, but you can make them thirsty. So you can suggest your patients, your clients to be giving you a review. And it can be on various different platforms. There can be external platforms. If you are in the medical field, there is Top Doctors, Doctify, all of these. They can be anonymized. There are other clients who chose to have actors explaining with a nice disclaimer saying, to protect the anonymity. We have an actor who has been explaining what our patient said, but at the same time, this creates connection and relatability. And we all, when we are clients ourselves, look at somebody else's feedback and testimonial. So the final point, trustworthiness, from a Google standpoint, it means certain specifics onto the website, which is the very, very obvious, the HTTPS connection, but it can also be the possibility of contacting you and reaching you very clearly, very transparently. So demonstrating that there is some sort of safety in the site. Now, if I'm moving, okay. Right. So the link that I will give you later about specific Google guidelines, I'm summarizing it for you today. So if you want, you can get the very core out of it in a nutshell, which is basically make sure that whatever is on the website is kept updated regularly and constantly. And we'll go in a little moment as to what do we mean with regularly, how often it should be updated, what is particularly sensitive and needs a different sort of attention in terms of update times. The authors, the experience and expertise that you showcase also means making sure that you have your author pages. Sometimes if you have a website, you might have part related to who has been publishing something, authors of articles and blogs. It might have been given it a minimal importance. It is actually something that is really important because they need to see who is the source and if it's somebody who is qualified to give that sort of advice. So making sure that the provenance of the information can be easily reconnected to someone who is a real figure and exists with all of the possible credentials. And when we're talking about safety and how easy it could be to contact you, there is one thing that Google likes, and it's the consistency of something that is name, address, and phone number, the NAP, because sometimes you see companies that are being rebranded or changed through times, their position, their practices might change, some of the contacts might change. This is something that doesn't speak well in your favor in terms of trustworthiness. So this consistency of the NAP element is something that will, even within the simple map factor, the local map and the local rankings is something that will help you having a strong boost. As for the level of safety, we were talking about obviously the security encrypted protocol on the site that is now a must-have because if you don't have it, you immediately have on your screen a warning about that. And it's not just for e-commerce websites, it's something that needs to be there for everyone. But at the same time, your privacy policies, your disclaimers, all of these elements clearly indicated on the websites, company number, and all of your references at the bottom. Those are all elements that mean much in terms of trust and being referenced and being findable. So we were talking about how often we should be updating our content. As I said, if you fall within these, your money or your life critical industries, keeping the content updated regularly becomes a sort of duty that you have. And the dates on content are something that sometimes is debated. People think they shouldn't have them on their pages because it looks like it's quickly outdated, the content. And you say, what if my content is evergreen? What if what to expect at your first consultation doesn't really change? Um, that content shouldn't need a date in there, but particularly if you fall within these categories, it's strongly recommended to have it and to get into a sort of habit, a healthy habit of reviewing these pages. Those pages, those evergreen pages, don't need you to retouch them very often, but we recommend at least once a year to definitely just have a read and see, because things change all the time. And if everything is okay, it doesn't need much change, but the date is going to be kept updated with the last update on, and it's something that is for you to know that you're in your safe zone, that everything on your site, if it's found, it won't be bringing any discredit to your practice. And at the same time, for Google, it's an element of confirmation that the site is given better quality than somebody else's because it has been reviewed more recently. So all things being equal, it would rank a little bit higher. Things that you would need to calendarize and make sure that you're reviewing more often, definitely the things that are having traction. So if you have, again, the healthy habit of checking your Google Analytics, quite often Analytics is a free tool that can just be connected onto a website, and you can have a gauge of how many users are entering your site, where they're coming from. So maybe you're doing lots of, I don't know, LinkedIn activity. Is there any traction coming from there? So you can measure the effort and the return on your investment. Even investment is only just time. It's the most precious asset that you have. So those things that from analytics, you see they are really getting a lot of traffic. Those pages, you should definitely keep an eye on them often. Because you're doing it for yourself, you have a lot of people that are checking those pages. You need to make sure that the call to action that you have on that page is the most relevant that you have now, because maybe now you want to promote a specific treatment and a specific sort of package that you're doing. You want the call to action to be the most updated, specifically on those pages that have the highest amount of eyeballs on there. But also because Google expects it. If the pages are having traction, they need to be fairly recently updated. And then all the things that might change over time. So if there are any references to things that you know that are possibly going out of date, so you're referencing to, I don't know, regulations or some sort of external factors that you know when they're varying, definitely those things need to be need to follow any sort of external guidance that you know. So when there are regulations, you need to stick to that quite strictly. So we would recommend you calendarize it every quarter, every 6 months, to have a review of those pages that you know, so you can kind of split into, you have your evergreen things, I don't know, symptoms or specific conditions, side effects, those things fairly evergreen, once a year at least, to have a review. And the things that vary more frequently and might have to do with, I don't know, tax brackets. We'll go into the specific industries in a moment. These ones you need to keep on a separate, close watch, at least twice a year. Now, one by one, going through the industries. If we are talking about doctors, private medical practices, definitely the things that you need to stick with. Absolutely, you need to make sure that all of the claims that you're having possibly can link out to an official government-approved external resource. So you are showing that there is a validation in your claims. Because the riskiest thing that you can do is to have something that isn't quite right in there, because that is bringing a whole bad light into the whole of the website. So if possible, those level of external links pointing out to non-competitive resources, official government resources, they will give a lot of safety and trustworthiness onto the website. You need to make sure that you're phrasing things onto the website in a way that everybody can understand, including possible patients from various level of knowledge and literacy, including not knowing the specific terms and make sure that you're mentioning. If you're mentioning the ways that the common people talk about certain things, then always clear explainers as to what are the legal and the official names of treatments and conditions and things like that. Obviously, stick to everything that is reliable and checkable, fact checking in terms of qualifications and titles and all of that. If we're talking about legal practices, regardless if it's family, criminal, commercial, employment law, it doesn't change. It still falls within these critical mass of your money, of your life industries in which we cannot risk having anything that isn't fully accurate. Then things that you need to remember to keep a close eye on is anything that is giving advice to people. So whenever you are mentioning something that might be changing because you know that some of these things are about to be reviewed, definitely you can preempt it and immediately after make sure that the site is kept up to date. And SEO is a zero-sum sort of game. So as soon as one of your colleagues kind of drops the ball because they're not really following, they don't have the time, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the willingness or the possibility of keeping up with these, and you're doing it, you're gaining advantage, you're gaining traction onto them. So you might be actually stealing some of the positions ranking into their top 10 or so. Same thing for anything that is that needs to be, can and should be fact checked as for your belonging to specific federations or associations. When we are talking about the financial industry, then in this case, things might, as you know, change over time, particularly if we're talking about rates and fluctuations of many kind. You know how the regulations need to be really, really strict, and all of those hours and hours of training, a requirement that they have on you is because these things absolutely have been impacting and can be impacting incredibly on people's lives. So we need to make sure that words expressed on the website cannot be misunderstood in any possible way by anyone, regardless of their way of interpreting the website. What if we forget? What if we don't keep up with these kind of things? Definitely, as we said, it's a zero-sum kind of game. You are getting lower, somebody's getting higher. Because when there are some things that don't just match what should be in terms of expressions, requirements, considerations, then the ranking of a website or a specific page might definitely suffer from that. And at the same time, then there is the chain effect of possibly losing some trust from viewers, losing their possible leads and even risking to be fined. In the end, things that you can gain by being completely accurate is ranking better than people who don't. And as we say, we know that many people can't keep up with these things very, very correctly and timely. At the same time, Google will change. They will change their guidelines. They will change the algorithm. They're constantly rolling up algorithm updates, smaller or bigger all the time. But there are some things that kind of weather the storm and don't really change. And you being able to produce regularly reliable, trustworthy content is something that kind of safe proves you into a good rank in a solid organic position, regardless of the values. Kind of changes that happen, and ranking better can help you getting more traffic, and that traffic can then convert into possibly getting better reputation and inquiries. So this is something you may have seen. We like helping people out. So if there is an individual sort of check that you would like to get, I would like to extend this offer. We will be running an analysis of the website plus 1 hour of actually helping you out and telling you how we see that this site could do better for you if you do this, this, and that. No strings attached. You can decide to then do what you want, bring the advice to your internal team, to somebody that you know that is looking after your website. It's an individual follow-up from the session. And yeah, the part that I wanted to share with you with all of this advice about websites and online Google requirements has now come to an end. And I'd be curious to hear from you if there was something that you found interesting that maybe you didn't know, something that you think that you can take away with you and implement in the next activities you will be doing. Let's see if there was anything in the chat. Okay, it was about
I think a lot of it is new and needs processing, really. I didn't realize that you needed to refresh your standard pages twice a year. I didn't think about pointing to external sources for trust. I didn't think about, just that constant renewal. I didn't know about the NAT thing, name, address, phone number, having that in regular places. I don't really know very much, really, Sylvia, if I'm quite honest with you.
Okay, because the very, very common thing that people have in these kind of industries is that they have a wealth of knowledge of treating their patients or helping their clients in critical situations. So marketing is not necessarily something that was taught in medical school or legal school. So that is fairly normal. I was talking with the doctor the other day and said, well, I would like to see you with a scalpel in your hand removing a gallbladder. And I said, no, I'd rather fix a website because that's my so there is absolutely a level of knowledge that it's not required for you to have. But the reason why I keep having these sessions every month is because I do believe in empowering people with knowledge. And in the end, you might decide you don't want to really be bothered doing these things, but at least knowing how it works, it removes a little bit of the stigma of it's a dark, obscure science, and we don't really know how Google interprets these things. So why is that guy ranking and I'm not? It's definitely nothing obscure. There are reasons behind, and there are these sort of best practices to keep in mind. Reviewing a website twice a year can be sometimes a little bit time consuming, particularly if pages start spiraling out of control and they get a little bit much. But it's it sort of kind of, I'm not saying end of year tax control that we're doing, but it is a part of a regular good practice that we need to have, and it can just be as much as rereading things a little bit and saying, is this still correct? Is it still accurate? Otherwise, we might, and believe me, we do end up finding sometimes when we audit websites that people still have like COVID guidelines on the website that shouldn't be there anymore because it's finished, it's over, and we don't want to think of it ever again. So we should be aware at least of the assets that we have and know that, yes, maybe I haven't reviewed it 6 months ago, but 1 year ago, more or less, I had a check and it's still fairly okay. Nothing big has changed around that. Any other kind of question? I know it was a shorter session today, and I might be able to give you the gift of half an hour free of your day, which is a good thing to do. And if it happens, oh, thank you so much. I'm glad. I'm glad. If you might feel like there is something that you'd like to ask, if you don't like asking it now, you'd like to ask it later, feel free to pop me an email. You get my email with the recording, so you can just follow up on that and say, by the way, I was meaning to ask you this thing, and we can keep talking afterwards if you like. I hope this helped, and yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day then, everyone.